I'm Bill Domgard. I'm president of Local 7750 in Denver, Colorado. And we're passing out, trying to get a telecom sector to change our bargaining for telecom. And
what brought you to this decision that you have to change the structure in order to deal with the crisis that you're facing?
Because we've had two last contracts have been really, the companies are united in how they bargain, and we're still divided in bargaining in separate contracts in different locations. Basically, our structure hasn't changed since 1980.
So the companies are whipsawing you?
They're kind of, yes, they're dividing and conquering is what it is. And so it's kind of hard to bargain because they divide us up, and so we end up losing our solidarity and our strength in numbers.
Well, some of the officials have argued that they have the structure now, and the president, Larry Cohen, can actually make decisions to unify that. You don't need a structural change.
Well, they haven't done it for the last two contracts in AT&T and Verizon, and our contracts have suffered because of it. We're losing members, we're losing benefits, our wages aren't going up very well. So this is coming from the members, the grassroots members. And
so this is a rank and file effort.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the proposals came from the AT&T ad hoc committee. It's presidents of all the locals in AT&T, and this is coming from our members that we need to change our bargaining structure, our bargaining practice. We got to do something different because what we're doing now isn't working, and we're having a little resistance from the upper echelons of the...
Why are they afraid of that?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Larry. I really don't.
Is he opposing it?
I'm not sure. I don't think he's really in favor for it. They came up with, the executive board came up with another proposal that has some good parts, but it still leaves the vice presidents in charges and ways to get out and bargain on their own, which is what we're trying to avoid. So we bargain with one voice instead of seven.
My name is Dennis Surratt, and I used to be Director of Education for CWA, as well as President in District 1, District 2.
And what are the issues facing CWA members and Telecom particularly at this convention?
Well, we're talking about way back. If I can go back to Joe Byrne during that time, you know, he fought because there was pattern bargaining. Pattern bargaining was to start negotiating with the weakest local and then sticking to the strongest locals with the package. And then he fought, and in 1971-72, they changed that around, and where we had national bargaining. So that means the full strength of the union behind the full strength of the company. And that was the way that we began to get a lot of the gains that we did.
Well, now there's whipsawing going on. What's happened? Why has there been a deterioration of national bargaining and unity of all the telecom workers?
Well, when you go back to pattern bargaining, sometimes you settle things with a component like the AT&T, and others you don't settle for it. So you eventually have union locals and districts fighting against each other. And that has formed a sort of a disunity in terms of the united front of labor.
And, I mean, in the Verizon strike, it seemed like they were winning the strike. There was national support for that strike, and all of a sudden they go back to work without a contract. What happened?
Well, I'll tell you, I went out there, when the Verizon was out on strike, and I had to bring coffee and donuts to a crew that was, because it's a 24-hour shift at 11:55. And I wanted to catch the group that was on and the group that was off. I ended up staying out there for 3 hours because no one of those folks, the young folks that were out there, knew what the hell was going on, didn't have a real foundation in terms of understanding where labor came from, and they just wanted to understand because they were losing money.
Well, where's the education? Why haven't the younger members been educated about what a union is and that history?
Well, it all started with the AFL when they decided that they weren't going to do education anymore. They did away with the education department back in 2004, 2005. I challenged that. And now we're at a stage where people are coming in and they don't understand what the commitment was or why they got the benefits they have at this time.
Now, Larry Cohen, the president of the CWA, in his presentation said that basically the place that you face class struggle is in the negotiations for contracts or getting a new union. Is that the case, or is it generally everywhere?
Class struggle is everywhere. And if you don't include the communities, the activists, and those who know, then you're not going to get a consensus, in terms of an agreement or whatever. So Larry Cohen, it may be correct. It is a class struggle. And that's what we need right now, because when you're looking at the courts and what they've done in terms of, when you look at what's going on today, there's class warfare. We're losing numbers and density in the labor movement. We don't have the kind of bargaining power that we've had many years ago, and we're looking at a stock market that goes up even when unemployment is going up. That's class struggle. We have a serious problem here. And I think at this stage of the game, when you're looking at a state like Michigan, going down into right to work, and Indiana and so many other states that are being threatened, even by Democrats, I think that we're in the stage now where we have to do class warfare, where we have to include the communities, we have to include the campuses, we have to include people with their education, even workers who don't quite understand what class warfare is about.
So in these next minutes, I want to try to do two things. I want to talk about our bargaining power that is clearly under attack and what we can do by building that broader movement that Ed talked about. Ask our CenturyLink delegates from District 7 working through the acquisition of Quest after US West, and now 8 months battling for their first contract with their new owner. Or as Ed discussed, the Verizon members in the East striking for 2 weeks. Not really for a contract at that time, one strike, but to force the company off the worst set of concessionary demands in our telecom history, and to bring that fight to the attention of our union in this nation. Then another year of bargaining and mobilizing, and finally reaching an agreement that maintained our standard of living with huge help from all of CWA and our allies. Ask our AT&T members across the country, working past expiration with constant mobilization and walkouts. Or name it CWA members at ABC, working 2 years past expiration, now in ratification on a tentative agreement that will prevent imposed conditions. And the non-union employers are growing stronger in every industry where we work. Unfettered, they drive down working conditions and pay. There's no check or counterbalance. And in turn, that undermines what we can achieve. That is why we have focused on organizing and organizing rights as part of our collective bargaining strategy, not separate. We know if we only focus on the union employers because we can, because we have the right to bargain, and we fail to focus on the non-union employers or on the anti-union political environment, or fail to recognize that there are limits to what union employers will agree to in negotiations, we are not really confronting our reality, and we will not succeed. This doesn't mean that we don't fight for the best deal possible. But as we know, bargaining is about making a difference. Today, it is certainly not about justice. Bargaining takes place as employers increase their profits by holding down our wages and benefits. Bargaining takes place in an environment of comparisons to the non-union industry and the global economy. Balancing our aspirations, our dreams for a better contract with the reality of our greatest challenge in 75 years. Our bargaining committee members have become heroes. Fight harder, or bargain longer, or even strike. It's simple to say, with better leaders, we'd have better contracts. But we must evaluate our bargaining results in terms of what others around us are achieving. We bargain in America with falling wages, healthcare losses, and the elimination of pensions. We can definitely coordinate better, as we have, and as we will, whether everyone agrees or not. But as I said a few years ago to Ron Gettelfinger, then the UAW president, during the near collapse of the auto industry in 2009, Ron, your negotiations are much harder than what Walter Reuther faced. Reuther was leading a growing labor movement with increasing political power and millions of workers with a history of standing up and fighting back. These are hard times, but in hard times, they're times of resistance. We learn what makes a difference and what does not. We learn how to create hope. We learn who our true brothers and sisters are. We learn about solidarity, about caring, about love. And it's our solidarity and love for each other that will carry us through this dark period in our history. Is to figure out how we take hope from Cablevision technicians, how we take hope from workers in the rest of the world. The most important factors that influence our own bargaining possibilities are, in fact, the percentage that are organized by collective bargaining. As I said, ours is the lowest in the developed world. That's why that story of Peabody Coal, why retiree health care and our union as well, and pensions are under attack, and throughout the nation they're disappearing. But not in Germany, or not in Brazil, where unions and democracy are rising up. In those nations, real wages after inflation are also rising. While except for union workers in this country, wages are actually falling. One amazing story, Brazilian bank workers, Contrafcu, are union. In Sao Paulo, Brazil alone, almost 500,000 of them. Today, those bank workers in Brazil, mostly customer service workers, back office workers, earn more than bank workers in the United States. And the Brazilian bank workers, recognizing that, has allocated $300,000 to help CWA organize bank workers here. We fight back. We stand up. 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 We fight back.
T. Santora, CWA 9003 in Los Angeles. I move to amend the report in the following way. Insert new section I to read as follows. The elected members of a single employer national bargaining committee, the regional bargaining committee members who have been selected to negotiate at a national bargaining table, shall also be full participants in the determinations described in sections D through H above. And then redesignate sections I and J below to K and L respectively.
You can speak on your amendment.
Thank you, Larry. Fellow delegates, I'm hoping that this would be accepted as a friendly amendment. It is intended as such. What we would like to propose here is that where we have the opportunity to have national bargaining, and I know that the proposal in the narrative determined that that was something that was desirable. If we're successful at that, we have a process in place to select a national bargaining committee from those regional bargaining tables. Those persons are selected by their colleagues who have been elected to the regional tables. One person from each bargaining unit would then sit on the national table. We believe that it's only fair to have elected representatives from those bargaining committees participate in the decisions, particularly at a national bargaining table, and this is the only way to make that happen in the Constitution. So This is about democracy at a lower level than the executive board, and we hope that the board will accept this as a friendly amendment, and if not, that the delegates will move it. Thank you.
Complex way of doing things here. Are you still there? Yeah. So we're talking about when there's a national table, correct? You can turn his microphone on, please.
Yes, that would be the only circumstance.
Yeah. So I think so. The Telecom VPs, if you don't mind, committee, I'm asking them because they submitted this through the board. Is that okay with you? So I believe. Do you guys need to caucus at all, or are you okay with it? You're all cool? All the way down the line? Some are down way at the end? Okay. Yes, it's accepted as a friendly amendment. Thank you. The way it would work is that members of the executive board in those areas would help sort that out. But it is not, there's not a definitive answer to your question. That's how that was determined this time, right? That's where the structure came from. So the same process would be at work. The 5 district VPs in coordination with, particularly if this amendment is adopted, with the 8 telecom VPs would sort the answer out. And I'm sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer. At microphone number 3.
After completing 14 months as an elected member of the 2012 District 9 Bargaining Committee for AT&T West negotiations for 17,000 members. I also served as an elected bargaining committee member in 2009. I rise to urge delegates to vote in favor of this constitutional amendment. This amendment will support our bargaining committees and help prevent the division we have experienced in recent bargainings against well-organized attacks from corporations such as AT&T and Verizon. Gone are the days when we had any meaningful relationships with our employers. Today's bargaining has become a war against greedy corporations whose main goal is to divide and weaken our union. This amendment is necessary now more than ever to maintain solidarity and confidence in our movement. Our future bargaining success will depend on our ability to change the status quo and maximize the leverage across the country in the face of these vicious attacks on the standards of living for all working families. Sisters and brothers, I urge you to support this amendment. Thank you.
David Blackburn, Local 7050, Phoenix, Arizona. Today, accountability for bargaining with our national employers, the telecom sector, has all been non-existent. As demonstrated in our last 2 bargaining rounds of negotiations with AT&T, most of our members were directly impacted by the settlement of other contracts that they had no choice or voice in. It is impossible to hold anyone accountable for the failures or success of our bargaining outcomes when responsibility is divided by multiple districts, vice presidents, each with different agendas and autonomy from one another. Promises and good intentions are no substitute for real bargaining coordination. After the failures identified in the 2009 round of bargaining, a new committee of 8 was formed with the promise of real coordination and mutual support. It collapsed within months. As the executive board states in the bargaining council proposal, the only way to defeat this pattern setter from a form of bargaining is to approach negotiations as a completely unified force. The unified telecom sector is the only way to ensure a single point of contact for all telecom bargaining committees and provide real coordination and establish continuity that is sorely missing. Our elected bargaining committees and the staff who support them need to have a central hub for sharing proposals, strategies, and resources to effectively coordinate negotiations at multiple tables. The The telecom industry has and continues to evolve in ways that our union has not kept pace with. The loss of thousands of jobs in the core companies where our membership density is the greatest has given rise to thousands more jobs in spin-offs, subsidiaries, and new ventures where we have not shared in the growth. Our current geography divided districts are unable to focus on an industry that no longer shares our obsolete boundaries. As stated well in the Executive Board's telecom proposal, if we don't expand our definition of the industry to recognize the realities of today, we risk becoming irrelevant in our own industry. We need a singular focus on the trends in our industry in order to take advantage of the new organizations and employment opportunities for our members. To strengthen our ability to bargain good contracts for our current and future members and to protect the legacy left to us by those who built this union. Thank you.
We expect our vice presidents to work with our elected bargaining committee to negotiate our contract, to develop a working relationship with our companies, to be familiar with our contract, and to have staff that I can call on to make certain my contract is upheld. This proposal will turn our bargaining process upside down. Instead of authority resting in our bargaining council, elected bargaining committee, and our elected vice president, it will give the authority and control to yet another officer, one person, maybe someone not so familiar with my contract and what's important to me and my members. Does that matter? You bet it does. I want to know that my voice and my members' voices are being heard. We voted to establish a bargaining council that will provide direction and guidance in negotiations. We've just voted to mandate that the vice presidents with contracts with the same company agree before signing off on a national issue. If we vote for this and we create a telecom sector vice president, he or she will decide whether or not a district can sign off on a national issue. That contradicts what we just adopted. So what do we want? Do we want our elected vice presidents to have to agree before settling on a national issue? Or do we want one vice president for all of our telecom making this decision? Do you remember President Bush always saying, "I'm the decider"? That didn't work out so well for our country. We don't need a telecom decider. It's too much power in one person's hands. Let's keep to our democratic principles, and let's keep the authority with our bargaining councils, bargaining committees, and our district vice presidents. Thank you.
Bill DeMerzo, 9400, California, also a member of the AT&T West Bargaining Committee in the last round of bargaining in 2009, and again in 2012. I believe there's some misunderstandings being communicated. The intent of this is to put the authority into a sector. We have other sectors that function well, we're asking for the same. We hear the word czar thrown around. The irony of that is the opposite. What we have now is many czars. We have districts that can settle contracts that harm the members in other districts. Those districts are not accountable. What we seek here is accountability first and coordination. Back to the other question I just heard, our vision of this is that they would use the regional resources that exist. And I'll use AT&T West for an example. What I would fully expect to happen is that contract came up. Our bargaining councils, just to clarify, we see these amendments as complementary, not a conflict. The bargaining council will still function. The bargaining committees will still function. If somebody in District 9, either Jim Whitecamp or one of his staff, he wanted to appoint to be the chief negotiator for the contract, that could all be done through local resources. We see that working the same in every district. We don't see a lot of transfer of resources. We see more democracy, and that's what this should be about. We've let the company, and I'll say this, we're done with corporations. I'll focus on AT&T, but it holds true of all these corporations. Verizon, West, all of them. Unfortunately, whether we admit it or not, these are very smart people that run these corporations. They do long-term planning. They do goal setting. They strategize implemental steps toward their desired ends. We, on the other hand, don't respond in kind as an organization. We don't have anybody responsible 365 days a year to look at a corporation like AT&T in a strategic way, anticipating what they're doing and seeing how it fits in the big picture. AT&T has this union divided up into, what, I believe 4 mobility contracts, 5 wireline contracts, internet contracts. The same labor relation folks micromanage every set of those bargainings. They move the pieces around intelligently as if they were playing chess. And it seems to us, we've been kicking the can, and sometimes just kicking the can down the road. Different people are asked to bargain different contracts, maybe a mobility contract over here, internet contract over there, core contract over here. We've had failed attempts at coordination and oversight. I think to quote other words, you know, if not now, when? We cannot let these corporations continue to destroy this union and the gains we've made over the years. We're disenfranchising our members, especially the new younger members. We talk about next generation. These young members that are coming up are looking what's happening in these contracts. They're looking at the downgrading of work. They're seeing the companies outsmarting us. And if you want to do any movement building, I would suggest we start movement building right here internally and get you. And get what is a union value, and it's called unity, ahead of what I hear is in conflict with it, which is called autonomy. Lastly, I'd say, we talk about the triangle. We need to understand the triangle. The foundation is representation. If our members feel fairly represented, they will respect the union. They'll participate in the union. They'll talk favorably about the union to their friends and neighbors. They'll be inclined to follow the recommendation of the union on how to vote. Conversely, if they feel bad about the union, bad about their contracts, you try and organize, people say, I got a friend in that union, he says it sucks. When you go approach a politician and say, I represent so many workers, they're going to look at you and go, yeah, but they're not going to vote how you tell them. So until we get our bargaining straight, until we honestly fix the problem that we experienced in 09 and 12, we'll have a problem with this union. And lastly, I'll say, the councils that we just approved, and I am for that, but it's been weakened a little bit since its inception because we staggered out the expiration dates of these contracts. We have a lot of work to do, and trying to get one house in order, to me, is the solution. So I urge everybody to support the amendment to the Constitution. Thank you.
Jim Wagner, President, CWA 1122 in Buffalo. I understand that there have been some problems at the bargaining table. We've just amended our Constitution to remedy these problems. Delegates, we need to give the bargaining councils a chance to work, and it will work. Collectively, we will make it work. And that's because it's based on the democratic principles that CWA stands for. In contrast, establishing a telecom sector vice president will put too much power into the hands of one person. That person will not know the details of every negotiation at every company. That person will not know the bargaining history behind each negotiation. That person won't have the relationships with our employers. A telecom sector vice president will make collective bargaining much worse. It will add another layer to the process. We elect bargaining committees to negotiate for us. Let us allow them to do their work with new guidance from the bargaining council. Bargaining is tougher than ever today, no question about it. One person, no matter how talented, can fix it. As President Cohen stated earlier, we need a check and counterbalance. This proposal compromises that. I'm voting no on this proposal, and I urge you all to do the same.
Greg Gibson, Local 9586, Norwalk, California. Sisters and brothers, I didn't make a speech, but I'm going to tell you what I experienced. I am an elected bargaining committee member that was referenced by the Against Mike. What we are currently doing is not working. I strongly believe in one union. I've stood with my AT&T sisters and brothers. I've stood with NABED. I've made calls for AFA. I believe in one union. The way we're bargaining is not one union. For me and the other elected bargaining committee members, we're not accountants. Most of us aren't mathematicians. I've got a few college degrees, but I don't have all those answers. And for me to sit there at the table and as if I'm starting from scratch, when brothers and sisters on the East Coast spent 16 months going over the same damn proposals is ridiculous. To not have that coordination, to not have that dialogue and support from the other districts that know very well what's coming our way is not working. Verizon flies their people from New Jersey that were out here when the East was bargaining. They know exactly what they're going to put at the table. They know exactly what they're going to give us. And frankly, what they're trying to give us is former GTE. Well, I don't work for GTE. I work for CWA primarily, but Verizon. And to say that because some of our members once worked for GTE that we're supposed to take a lower level, we busted our asses when the East Coast was in their fight, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of what they did. But I have to say, I'm not feeling the love, and I'm not feeling the one union when they're sitting there telling California, because even though you're Verizon now, that you were once GTE, and you're expected to take a lower package, you're expected to take a bigger cut on your health care benefits, and basically eat shit and not be one union. Well, it's one company. I think we need to be one union, and I think having that single point will give us that. Thank you.
District sector boundaries. The committee recommends adoption of this proposal.
My name is Bill Henderson. I represent CWA 1298, and I'm proud to stand here before you today. I'm here to tell you that this resolution is not a solution, but it will add more confusion to the process that we already are dealing with. I would rather have a district person who understands the issues represent me before a group of AT&T thieves, thugs, the bastards that we have to deal with every day at the bargaining table, than I would one person who might not understand my issues. Unity is the issue here. Autonomy can never work. And I think this is what we just passed with the resolution on the bargaining committees. This is in opposition to what we've just said. I believe in one union, one fight, one future. Not just words, but to understand we're all in this together, and this resolution will not get us to where we want to be. It's not a question of doing something because something didn't work, but it's to understand what the problem is. And the problem is, if we don't stick together, we're all going to lose. I've seen across this country every district fall down and leave us standing for the last one. Twice this has happened, not once. History repeats itself. But until we understand that we're all in this fight together, and it's not how I get mine that's going to get us there, we're never going to win. It's us here that's going to change it. One of the biggest losses that I'm going to have if this resolution passes is losing my staff rep, who is essential to my bargaining and understanding the issues that we have before those bastards AT&T. She is integral to my success at the bargaining table and key to the future of our union and the communications that we have to go on together. This is not the answer. This is just avoiding the issue. I believe that we will not lead to a stronger union, but we will have one person who will, without a doubt, be controlling our destiny for everyone, whether good or for bad. I urge you to to vote no, knowing that we got to give the bargaining councils a chance. I was part of the the Committee of 8. I've seen this every time for the last 6 years. This is the way not to go. The way to go is to say no and to go forward. Thank you.
Local 9003. I really wasn't intending to speak on this proposal, but I have to make some clarifications. As one of the over 100 authors of this proposal who are here in this line, let me try to hit a couple issues. First and foremost, I would ask that the delegates review the proposal and look on page 8, beginning on page line 330, continuing to 331. It's probably the most important piece of this proposal. The last words, as determined by the executive board. You just heard Larry explain, or pardon me, Larry, not explain why we don't have an answer for why mobility is not in the TNT shop. That's because the executive board gets to make those decisions. The executive board, whom we all have a vote with, if it's a district and if you're in a sector, you have 2 votes on that board. And we both, we all get to vote for the Secretary Treasurer and the President. So there's plenty of democracy there at the executive board. Furthermore, I believe that the committee has erroneously stated that this proposal would create structural chaos and a massive move of resources. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every district vice president today represents people in other sectors. Every district vice president has multiple duties, one of which is bargaining for those contracts residing in their district. Every district vice president has grievance work, has education work, has political work, has unity building work in this union. Nothing in this proposal takes any of that away. Nothing in this proposal demands any of that. But what this proposal does reiterate, as it does for every one of the sector vice presidents sitting on that dais, as determined by the executive board. Now, to the point that people are worried about having one individual make some decisions about a contract they may not be familiar with, I want to remind the delegates of the proposal that we just adopted, that I supported. If these vice presidents, who have been unable to stay unified throughout AT&T bargaining, it will go to, guess what, one person who may not be familiar with my little contract. Guess what? That decision will also be as determined by the executive board. Nothing in this proposal changes any of that. It's a smokescreen. What I suggest to you is what my Irish grandmother taught me many, many moons ago. It's an old Irish proverb. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on all of us. Please, let's get this fixed once and for all. Vote yes on this proposal.
There's someone, I don't have a card here, but...
Thank you, Kevin Shield, 1103. This is not a structural problem. This is a leadership problem, and we're trying to circumvent, trying to find solutions by going around and creating more bureaucracy. Okay? We have to stand together, and if you're having problems getting good contracts because our leaders aren't doing what you feel they need to do, then you know what you have the right to do? You have a right to vote them out. But what you don't have a right to do is you don't have a right to force members who don't want to be under a telecom telecom sector into a telecom sector. This is going to create more animosity among the ranks, which we don't have the luxury to go through right now. We have to come together, but the way to come together is not what's in this proposal. Also, in my opinion, and the people who are saying these opinion as well, is you do not want Washington, D.C. to control your destiny. Bargaining must be done locally. Bargaining must be done by the district, by the people who know the contract, by the people who know the history. It cannot be centralized by Washington, D.C. So I urge everyone to stand up against this motion. Thank you.
We're now voting on the amendment. All those in favor of Amendment 6, please indicate by raising your hand. Down hands. Against? It is defeated.
Okay, my name is Kevin Condi. I'm the Secretary Treasurer of Local 1101, and we're located in Manhattan.
And who do you represent?
We represent Verizon workers. We're the only local with Verizon wireless workers. We have 72. We have AT&T Mobility, adjunct professors at CW Post, a couple of healthcare facilities, Conifer Park and Arms Acres, and some independent companies.
And what is going on in the industry with Verizon and the whole CWA fight with that company?
With Verizon, well, basically they want to, and what they would like to do, and that they're fighting us every step of the way, is really deteriorating the contracts that we took so long to build, disregarding the contract that we've just recently signed, and basically trying to pay the union no mind.
And you've had a struggle for democracy to get membership power going. Tell me about the dynamics of what's going on in the union, because it was a very important national strike against Verizon, was called off and without a contract. Where do things stand now, and what is the state?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. What?
Well, there's a crisis in the union. It's reflected at this convention. Where to go, how to fight back, how to organize, unify. How is this issue going to be resolved in this fight with Verizon and other telecom companies?
Well, I think basically, and that's where the democracy is going to have to come in. It's going to have to be a groundswell from the bottom up. We get all the members involved. I think that's what we tried doing in our local with the Verizon. We kept the members informed. We knew why they knew why they were fighting, and if they knew the reasons for it, they were more apt to do it. And we had a great participation, great mobilization, and a lot of them were actually dissatisfied that they had to go back, and that's another issue. But they were ready to fight longer than the rest.
Now, the question of returning to work, was there a vote of the members to return to work?
No, there wasn't.
Should there be before workers go back to work when they're out on strike?
Well, there's two schools of thought on that. I think yes, but basically, I guess, is it a true democracy or a republic? You're voting for your elected officials to make those decisions. That was the bargaining team, and that was the elected leaders, so that they were in their authority to do it. And I guess there's going to be a lot more debate on that.
Well, deregulation of the utilities in every industry has had a big effect on the unions. I mean, it was organized in part to weaken the trade union movement. How are the unions going to fight back when you have all these different companies and they play one off against the other and that kind of thing? It seems to be a general situation.
Well, I think that's where we do have to get politicians involved. Even with, I'll speak on Verizon right now, with fiber optic and their Fios with Verizon, they've had the regulated industry basically finance all of that. Downtown Manhattan after Hurricane Sandy, they're cutting out the cable. They're replacing it with fiber, but unfortunately the fiber and the Fios and the wireless are not regulated. So you have the regulated industry that, with the Public Service Commission in New York, they're guaranteeing the rate increase they paid for it. The customers are being forced onto a service they don't want to be, or they have no service, and they have no regulation over and no oversight on it because the market's going to do it. So basically, I think the politicians are going to give them a free rein. That's not the way to go. And I think our big thing is where we have the issues with the politicians, instead of just taking lip service, we've got to vote the guys out that don't follow through on their promises to us.
But it seems like these politicians nationally are paying attention to the telecom companies. I mean, as far as national regulation and deregulation, they continue to allow deregulation. Is there any movement politically among all unions and working people to say that you have to regulate fiber and these others to protect the public?
Well, there was some of that, and I know in New York City, We did have some of those regulations we're pushing back. Our big hope was with the Employee Free Choice Act. We know that really, we got some lip service on that. And that's one of the things of holding politicians' feet to the fire. There was actually a meeting, I forget where it was in New York City about 2 weeks ago in Brooklyn, where they were trying to bring that back up and possibly revive the Employee Free Choice Act. And I think we really do have to do that to even the level playing field, have a level playing field.
Well, President Obama just announced that he's going to negotiate a chain on Social Security, which he promised that he wasn't going to touch. And Larry Cohen, the president here, said that the Democrats who've been elected by labor in many cases are turning their backs on labor in different states, and basically that the unions have to start having a different approach towards these politicians.
I absolutely agree with that. There's no doubt on that one. When Obama was elected, I was on buses down in Pennsylvania. That's a long way away, going door to door. We got out to vote for him, and I think he pulled the rug out on us with the Employee Free Choice Act. Put it on the back burner. I don't know why he can't keep a couple of things on the front burner. He can multitask. He's not doing everything. And they bought it. They were going to buy some time. The Affordable Care Act, we were helping pushing that. That was supposed to help all of our issues to make everybody playing a level playing field. And now it looks like we might be getting screwed on that, though, too.
Now, how are you going to get screwed on that?
Well, technically, if you read the bill, some of the tax ramifications down the road, their so-called Cadillac tax or whatever on our to use a term very loosely on that. But we were supposed to bring everybody's up now. Now it looks like they want to bring our levels down to everybody else. We're going to spiral down, and I don't like it at all. So the tracks with medical care that was paid for 100%. This is the first time. I've got 27 years with Verizon and the legacies, and going back to New York Telephone. We had great medical, and this is the first time we're paying. The bargaining team seemed to think this was the best thing that they can get, and there's nothing against them. I think I have different opinions. Our local was one of the only ones that voted no on that contract. But again, democracy who holds out, and we'll live and we'll support support the union and move on, and just keep voicing our opinion.
Now, there's a debate here, and there's a vote right now on this telecom director, a telecom section, so that you can have more unity in negotiations with these telecom companies, and they're not able to pit one company against another. Where do you stand on that?
I see good points on both, honestly, and then it's not to be a cop-out. I was like a real politician on that one, right? I do see, it took us years to get a national contract with AT&T. Then the vesture came and they got to do it once, right? I don't understand. I know in certain times in the East, they may not have negotiated with us together, but they were at different tables, but they were in. I don't know why you need another person to take over and the rest. Larry Cohen should be in charge. We have a president now. He's responsible for them all. Just adding another layer, I don't really think is the answer. If something broke, I think they do have some valid points on that. This is 2013. I don't know why we can't talk. To hear the gentleman on the microphone before saying we were negotiating for 13 months and they didn't know anything about it. Well, you can't pick up a phone? Fly out, come together. You could have met.
Well, is there any conferences where all telecom workers come together? A telecom convention of all telecom workers? Because it seems like these companies are heavily playing workers in unionized companies against each other. And is there any national conference of all unionized telecom workers coming together, even from all unions, so that you're not basically fighting each other?
It's a good idea. I don't know if there is per se. I know I was involved with some labor note stuff, and we had gotten we had a telecom conference breakout session there, and we had some people from AT&T, some of the independent companies. It wasn't a union thing per se. A lot of it was union activists involved.
Do you think the union should do that?
I think I understand money is a restraint on everything because we are shrinking. We do have to grow, so we've got to do it smarter.
People are coming to this convention. There could be a meeting of all telecom workers at this convention, couldn't there?
Well, I think there should be. Whether it's directly sponsored or not, I know a lot of the delegates that are here, you got a few hours here with the agenda, but we all work in the same issues across the country. And a lot of the guys with the proposal that was up for vote right now, I got a good chance the other night. We're in one hotel. I guess birds of a like feather keep grouping. Our district, a lot of us are all together. We know each other. And I had met somebody, and I went over to see his hotel. and they were adamantly opposed to the Constitution. So I got a good chance to talk to them for a few hours about what their feelings were. So maybe that's why I'm a little, I do hear their concerns. I'm not so sure I agree with that being the solution, but I hear it.
Now, I mean, one of the things about the convention is, I mean, first, you can't see. There's no TV here. You can't even see the speakers, And the other thing is the issue of a national labor channel to educate people about deregulation, about the effects on workers. What do you think about the CWA and other unions having a national labor channel for all workers in this country where their issues can get out on a channel?
Well, I think it's definitely something to be proposed, something to be looked at. I mean, again, it's 2013. There's, whether it be on some of these other channels, I mean, you got a million public access channels, you got internets, and however you're going to do it, the technology is there. It doesn't have to be an NBC or CBS where you're going to, with the money. I mean, it would cost some. There's got to be startup costs and some maintenance fees, but I think it's a doable thing. We spend money on a lot of other issues.
I like these